Obligation sex is bad, and we're going to talk about it today. Hello, it is Sheila from Bare Marriage. I'm here with my husband Keith because Rebecca is super busy finishing the editing for episode 3 of our Love and Respect deep dive. So episode 1 went live last week. Episode 2 went live this week. The video was up earlier. The podcast was out today. So if you have not seen them, they are amazing. And of course, one of the things that Love and Respect does is it really solidifies the obligation sex message. And as we were getting this deep dive ready, I realized that a lot of the stuff we talk about on social media is a lot more nuanced now, because I talked about all this obligation stuff, you know, back when Great Sex Rescue was out. And I wanted to revisit it because I had a couple of interesting comments on some older reels this week where people obviously don't understand why obligation sex is bad. So I thought today we could go back to basics.
I know.
And just teach it. And I have so much that you're going to have to jump in it because I could just,
you know. But the thing I was just thinking on that was, you know, you talk about this obligation sex is bad. And when you first put this out, everyone was like, no, the Bible says don't deprive. And you're like, but that's not what it means. And so it's like, how can you think that's the Christian view, is that women have to when men say, even if they don't want to, right? And so eventually people, like, you know, most people are like, obviously you got that totally wrong. And obviously obligation sex is bad. And now we're talking about the next things. And then every once in a while someone comes to an old post and goes, what do you mean obligation sex is bad?
It's like, okay. So here we go. We're going to lay it out. All right. Obligation sex is the idea that a woman is obligated to give her husband sex when he wants it. And it's almost always about women giving sex to men. It's very rarely the other way around. And we measured the effect of that in our survey of 22,000 women, 20,000 who completed the survey, for our book, The Great Sex Rescue. And what we found is that is one of the most dangerous messages that women can internalize. Women who get married believing it, they have lower orgasm rates, lower libidos, but most interestingly and importantly and devastatingly, their chance of experiencing sexual pain disorders increases to almost the same extent as if they had been abused, because our bodies interpret obligation as trauma. And we have a super interesting article coming out in the Journal of Sexual Medicine talking about that and looking at how actually sex with obstructed penetration is really common among evangelical women, even apart from abuse. And so, like, this is a real problem, okay? So obligation sex has really, really, really bad fruit. But people will say, well, but you need to understand how much men need it.
Well, because the thing is that in most of these cultures, it's thought that men want sex all the time and women don't want it at all. And that's sort of the mentality. So it's like, if we just said, have sex whenever you want to as a couple, she won't want to as much as he wants to. That can't be allowed. We have to tell her to have sex. And so then what happens is women do this obligated sex, which kills their libido. Like they don't want to ever, because they've destroyed the whole experience of sex. So rather than teaching men, hey, you know, maybe like make this good for your wives, we tell wives to do it anyway. And then what happens, of course, is women don't enjoy it. And then men feel guilty because she obviously doesn't enjoy it. So then what we do, we reevaluate and realize we got it wrong. No, we don't. We tell women, do it because you have to, but make sure he feels like you want to. Which is what we taught women, right? And it's not enough to just give it to him. We have to make him think he's the greatest lover in the world, even when he isn't. And it's so silly.
Or even when he's making you do something you don't want to do. Like Gary Thomas in the book Married Sex talks about giving hand jobs postpartum. Or when you're on your period, and why men like it. And he's talking about how men like it because they hear you moan and they feel your wetness between your thighs. It's like, honey, if you are postpartum, that's blood. You know? Like, she's still wearing a diaper-sized pad at this point, right? You know, and like how aroused you're getting. And it's like that the women aren't getting aroused, but some women do. Okay, women do get aroused giving hand jobs postpartum, but those are not the women who need to be convinced to do it in a book. And so this book was written to women who don't, okay? But he's saying, no, you know, they love it because you're getting aroused, because men have to convince themselves that women like this. And so they give all this instruction to women on how to make it seem like you're enjoying it. Like For Women Only does this, bunch of books do.
That one you tell Gary Thomas is very... It's very descriptive and very but they all say this. It's like they realize there's a problem because for some reason the women in their churches don't want this. Like they keep saying it's a gift from God. Like if you have to remind people constantly that it's a gift from God, it may not feel like a gift to them. Right? And so instead of saying what is it that made us not say, hey guys, let's take a step back and think about why they aren't enjoying it.
And that's what hasn't been done. Because when the reason that this came to mind this week is because I had a couple of comments on an older reel where I was doing a stitch of, I forget her name, and I'm sorry I forget her name, but it was Josh McPherson's wife. So Josh McPherson is a mega church pastor, and his wife was giving this sermon, or part of a sermon, where she was saying how important it is for women to give their husband sex and to not withhold. I guess women are allowed to give sermons in complementarian churches as long as they're telling women to have more sex. I don't know.
I was thinking that, but I wasn't gonna say that.
But people were saying, no, you're wrong.
If it supports the agenda, they're allowed.
Yeah, people were saying, no, you're wrong. She's not arguing for obligation sex. Like, you're taking this out of context. She's just simply saying, don't withhold or don't treat sex like a weapon. But here's where the obligation comes into it. Whenever, and here, please remember this, whenever we are having a conversation about sex, and the problem is framed as she doesn't want sex enough, and the solution is framed as she needs to give sex more, then we are giving an obligation sex message, even if we don't say, hey, women, you're obligated to give your husband sex. And here's why. We have a 47-point orgasm gap, by which I mean that 95% of evangelical men almost always reach orgasm in a given sexual encounter, compared to just 48% of women. So that's a lot of women who are not having a good time. We also know that 16% of women say that their primary emotion after sex is feeling used. All right. We know that 35% of women say their primary motivation for having sex is that they feel guilty if they don't. All right. So sex for many women is not a good experience. And so if our primary, if we say the big problem is that women don't want sex, instead of saying the big problem is that men aren't giving women the kind of sex that they would want, then we're missing the entire point. And so you simply cannot have an argument about sex, or a discussion about sex in the church, where the main point is she needs to give him sex that she doesn't want, instead of asking, why doesn't she want it? Yeah. Because, okay, I'm going to list 5 things. Can you list them?
Yeah.
Do you know them all? Yeah, you try. Try.
If she's having regular orgasms.
Okay, she's frequently orgasms.
If she feels emotionally close during sex.
Yeah.
Right. If there's not pornography issues in the family, in he or she. Oh, I'm missing it. If she's not obligated. No, what's the next one?
No sexual dysfunction.
Oh yeah, sexual dysfunction.
Yeah.
That was the last one. But I don't know. What's the other
high marital satisfaction.
Oh yeah, if overall the relationship is good. If overall the relationship
so that's pretty good. Yeah. So high marital satisfaction, she frequently uses orgasm, no sexual dysfunction, no porn use in the marriage, and she feels emotionally connected during sex. Yeah. When all of those things are present, guess what? Frequency isn't a problem, okay? Like, sex tends to happen. And so instead of viewing her libido as the problem that needs to be fixed, let's instead see libido as a symptom of a different problem that's the one that we need to solve.
Yeah, I agree. So, my theory, is that you have a problem, and the problem is that women in your churches don't seem to want to have sex, right? Yeah. So the solution is going to be, you can either teach the men or you can teach the women. Right? Mm-hmm. And so my question is, like, why is it they chose to teach the women to have sex anyway? Yeah. Like, that's my question. And I think it's because these churches are basically centered on men. Like, they think that they put men in a higher place than women. That's why they say women need to submit to their husbands in a way husbands don't just submit back. They, like, all these kind of things, right? And it's very ironic. So because of that, it has to be the woman's problem to fix it for the man. And then when that doesn't work, when she likes sex even less, they don't realize they made a mistake. They tell the woman to gaslight herself. You need to want it. You need to generate this. Like you need to, don't just do it out of obligation. Do it because you really, really, really want to. Yeah. So I'm obligating you to not feel obligated. Yes. Like, it's ridiculous, right? And it's so ironic because these teachings say, we want men to be in charge for the benefit of women. So here's a great place where, guys, you could have taken the first step and investigated yourself and decided, what can I do to make sex better for my wife? But none of these churches that preach men being in charge and women following took that opportunity. They all blamed it on the women and told the women to change. Yeah. It's like, if you believe men are in charge for the benefit of women, why did it play out this way? Because I don't think they really believe it's for the benefit of women.
I think there's another reason too, which is I think a lot of men in evangelical circles use sex as their emotional regulation. And so they actually are quite desperate for sex. Yeah. Because without sex, they can't really stay calm. Mm-hmm. Like they need sex to feel connected to their wives, but they don't want to do that actual work of connection. And so sex makes them feel like, okay, everything's okay. You know?
But this is not, I don't think that that's specifically taught in evangelical churches. I think it's just a broad thing for men across society in general that's also in the church, and the church isn't preaching against it.
Yes.
Right? Because it fits their agenda that men are these emotionless, tough robots that take care of everything and stand up strong, and women support them as they do all the fighting and slay the dragons.
Yes.
And this kind of nonsense, as opposed to us being partners, sharing life together and sharing wonderful, intimate experiences together.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing, when we get into this obligation sex, and people bring up 1 Corinthians 7, the do not deprive verses, is I always ask, okay, what is it that you're not supposed to deprive each other of? Like, what do you think Paul is specifically talking about there? And most people will say, well, he means do not deprive each other of sex. But what do we mean by sex? Like, do we merely mean intercourse? Because then she could be lying there making a grocery list in her head. She could be in
if it's just that one
pain.
act.
Yeah.
That's all your sexual relationship is?
Then really her experience is secondary. It doesn't really matter, because most women that we found in our survey, most women do not reach orgasm through intercourse alone. Most women need other stimulation, and a lot of women don't reach intercourse or orgasm at all during intercourse. Like, they just can't. And so when we make intercourse the main thing, we actually deny women's main sexuality. But that's also not what how the Bible talks about sex when it's giving positive messages about sex. Okay, like there's a lot of interactions about sex which are bad, people getting raped, etc. But like when it's actually setting up the ideal of what this is supposed to be, we know that in Genesis 4 talks about sex being intimate. Adam knew his wife Eve. In Song of Songs,
that's not a euphemism.
Yeah, that's actually like this is supposed to be an intimate experience.
That's the word God chose to use. It's supposed to be something intimate and deep.
Yeah. In Song of Solomon, sex is pleasurable for both. She's having a good time. And in 1 Corinthians 7, it's mutual. So sex is not one-sided intercourse. Sex is something which is intimate, mutual, and pleasurable for both. Because if she's lying there and she's in emotional turmoil, and her main experience after sex, her main emotion is feeling used, how is she being deprived if she doesn't have sex? Okay, like having sex is actually depriving her. That's why these verses simply cannot mean what people say they mean.
Well, if you think, it says specifically that do not deprive each other, because her body belongs to him and his body belongs to her. That's what it's saying. So they're supposed to be equivalent. Yeah. So if what you're saying is she shouldn't deprive him of something that feels really good for him and not so great for her. Yeah. And he shouldn't deprive her of something that feels really great for him and not so good for her.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense. That's ridiculous, right? and the whole idea that, well, it doesn't matter. It says her body is his. Yeah. So it's like, well, then theoretically, literally, if you're going to interpret that verse totally literally, that means he can say to her, your body is having sex tonight. You're going to have an orgasm.
Yeah, because, and this is what we get
Let me finish. Sure. So he's allowed to say, your body's going to have an orgasm tonight. You're having sex, you're going to have an orgasm tonight. Yeah. But she's allowed to say, okay, but yours is not. Yeah. So if anything, the verses say you can be nice to your spouse and give your spouse something, but you can't take from your spouse. That's the whole point. And the verse is being used by these churches to say you can take at will if you want sex. Yeah. That's not the point.
Yeah. And what I've heard people say, which is horrifying, is that 1 Corinthians 7 says that you need both people's consent to say no. It turns the whole idea of consent on its head, because it says do not deprive except by mutual consent and for a time. So they're saying, well, because of that, it means she can't say no to sex. And so consent is turned on its head. When you say that we need two people's consent to say no, that means you only need one person's consent to say yes. And that's horrifying.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're going to go somewhere, but I'm just on a roll here.
Sure, go for it.
And just to the guys out there, who wants a relationship where the sex you're having is obligated sex? Like, why do we get into debates about what the Bible means so we can prove that we're allowed to obligate women? Where is our heart at if that's what we're doing? Like, I don't think you're right about your interpretation of the Bible, but if you are, Like, why is that where your heart's going? Like, why is it, like, Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Like, how do you think obligating your wife, like, and it's not going to be good. It's ultimately going to be so empty. Why would you want that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what obligation sex is, okay? That's why it's bad. Please read The Great Sex Rescue, if you haven't already, to figure out how to make this better and to see all the ways that we've really gone wrong in it. But we just wanted you to understand obligation sex in a nutshell. Maybe we'll do another concept in a nutshell.
And I give a little
soon.
teaser there of how if you get rid of that message, how good it can be.
Exactly. And it really can be. And so we have a lot of that. We have an orgasm course. If you would like to figure that out, if that's been a piece that hasn't worked for you, I'll put a link to that in the podcast notes. We have an orgasm course, a libido course, read The Great Sex Rescue, and of course, take a look at our Love and Respect Deep Dive. Episodes 1 and 2 are out, and I'll put a link to those in the podcast notes too. Okay, have a good weekend, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.